Alrighty. Welcome everyone to my review for the One Last Promise Challenge. This is the Survivor Finals. Very exciting stuff. It's me and two other players participating, and in this video I'm kind of just going to go over their challenges, what they did, what I did, and kind of just speak through the logic and cards and all that. For those who are not familiar, Magic Set Editor Survivor is a custom card competition in which people submit cards to a series of ever-increasingly difficult challenges and try to do the best they can, and then a panel of judges judge those cards, and the best move on to the next round. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at our final challenge. So, this is kind of a two-parter. In the first part of the challenge, we were asked to design 3 sets, and now that we've reached the second part of the challenge, we have to design another 3 sets. One of those sets has to be set on a new plane. Each of those sets must have a creature card and a non-creature card that isn't a planeswalker or battle or anything. It does have to be one of the OG non-creature types. And then all 5 colors must be represented across the 6 cards for these 3 sets. Pretty much almost exactly the same as the first challenge. And as the extra tough part, because this is the finals, we have to design 12 more cards, 2 for each set you've already made between this challenge and the last one. Across the 12 cards, there are 4 like buckets that each need to have 3 cards filled in. And these buckets are like requirements like a rare or mythic card that is playable in standard, a multicolored archetype uncommon card, a story spotlight card, or a card with a new expert level mechanic. And these cards, you can't have more than 1 bucket fulfilled by the same card, but you can't have 2 cards in the same set that are fulfilling the same bucket. So if your first card is a story spotlight card, your second card cannot be a story spotlight card for any one set. Alright, I'm pretty sure that covers everything, so let's just go ahead and get into the cards. First up, we have Masterman's cards. So let's go ahead and start with Trisme. So let's go ahead and read the blurb. In the first set of the Panacea arc, we are introduced to the plane of Trisme, where mana physically manifests from emotion and imagination. For centuries, people called alchemists have raced to be the first to solve the Grand Formulation, an expansive magical formula said to have been conceived by Trisme's creator, whose solution promises the secrets of immortality. A young alchemist named Pseudo begins his journey through the Omen Paths, following the writing of his planeswalker mother as he searches for a way to cure his terminally ill sister. So we've already read this blurb, but now we can go ahead and get into some new cards. First, we have Foreboding Truths. We have blue and then white-black hybrid for a sorcery uncommon. It says draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless you unravel. To unravel, exile up to 3 cards from your graveyard with 3 or more card types among them. I believe we've seen unravel before in last week's challenge, because I believe this is a returning set. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But I believe this is a returning set, but I think Unravel has been tweaked a little bit since then to be a little harder to fulfill, which I think I am a fan of. This card is pretty solid. I think just if you can ever turn this into a 2-mana draw 2, you're going to be pretty happy and want to do that. But if it's a draw 2, discard 1, that still helps you unravel in the future. So I'm a big fan of this one. Next we have Tower of Rosma, a legendary land with tap, add colorless, tap, add 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a spell that's 3 or more colors, or pay 3 and tap and exile Tower of Rosma to return target card that's 3 or more colors from your graveyard to your hand. This is just a pretty classic 3 color matters land. This is going to work for both signaling in set synergies about 3 color matters, or probably a 3 color faction set if I had to guess. And this is kind of going to be the glue between those factions, that they're each 3 colors and they each are going to have some synergies. And again, we're seeing some graveyard matters here, so that's this, and Unravel is leading me to believe that this is a graveyard focused set in addition to being a 3 color set. And then I believe these are the cards from last time. I'm not going to check if these are new stuff. I should read through it just in case. Impulsive Familiar is a single red mana for a 1/1 enchantment creature elemental cat. It has haste and envision. As long as you cast a multicolored spell this turn, this creature gets +2/+0 and has trample. And then we have Mirel the Bright-Eyed, 1 white black for a 2/2 creature lizard wizard. Interestingly, not legendary. It has Envision. At the beginning of your end step, if you cast a multicolored spell this turn, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Interesting. Okay, so we're kind of splitting our... This is our... Okay, so I knew I saw this earlier, but this was a new card, so I was wondering how it was going. So we have our original card here, and a new card here, original card here, and a new card here. Okay, that makes more sense. I was a little confused. Okay, so yeah, we have Mirel the Bright-Eyed here. Honestly, I think Mirel falls short a little bit for me. I think missing the legendary tap line is a bit of an odd thing. It is a common, so I understand leaving it off. And then I think being a hybrid card that causes an opponent to lose life and potential mono white, it's going to be a rough sell. I mean, yeah, you can trigger with multicolored spells, which implies you are going outside of white. But I don't know, if you cast like a Celestia spell, that's still going to be a bit of an odd interaction. Next, we are returning to Sundown on Thunder Junction. The Panacea arc continues on the frontier plane of Thunder Junction. The plane has been whipped into a frenzy by the instability of a new Omen Path and the arrival of the Sundown Troop, a group of wandering performers led by a desparked planeswalker named Declan Rowe. Pseudo has arrived on Thunder Junction in hopes of finding the Ember Seed, a relic that, according to his mother's journal, is a key piece of the Grand Formulation. Unfortunately, Declan also seeks the Ember Seed to reignite his lost spark, and he's willing to use every trick he has to find it first. So Brush Dancer Bandit, I believe, has not changed since the last time, but I'll go ahead and read it anyway. 1 and a green for a 2/2 creature lizard bard rogue. It has Posse. At the beginning of your end step, if a token you control entered and or attacked this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Yep, that's pretty much the same. So let's go ahead and look at Sundown Lion Dancer. 2, a black and a red for a 3/2 creature human warlock. Whenever an attacking creature you control dies, you lose 1 life and draw a card. And then it has Linger. When this creature dies, if it's not a token, create a token copy of it with Decayed. It can't block. When it attacks, sacrifice it at end of combat. So Decayed is a returning mechanic from Canon, and this is going to go ahead and build in Decayed to another mechanic, which I think is quite neat. Returning as a Decayed copy is always solid because it can't block and it only gets 1 attack, so it's kind of perfect for what's the word? Kind of perfect for limited synergies. You want to try to make tokens not block when you can, when they're like a token mechanic. In my opinion, it's very helpful, and I think this is a great use of it. And I think this is also a very interesting card because, of course, it enables itself on the second attack once it's decayed. Troopcaster's Trick, I believe, is the same as well. 1 a blue and a red for a sorcery. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card. If you discarded a non-land card this way, this spell deals 2 damage to target opponent. And it has Flourish. If you cast a spell from your hand, exile it as a result. You may cast it from exile on any turn you attacked. Yep, pretty much the same. Then we have Sundown Showdown. For a single black mana, we have a sorcery with Spree, which is choose 1 or more additional costs. You can pay blue to exile target instant or sorcery card without Spree from your graveyard. If it doesn't have Flourish, it gains Flourish. You may cast it from exile on any turn you attacked. And then 1 in a red, this spell deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Declan couldn't help but make 1 final gamble. I missed a little period on the end there, but otherwise, I actually really like this design. You do have to tech into either Dimir or Rakdos or Grixis to make this work, but once you do, it's really solid. 2 mana to kind of get a permanent flashback is a really good rate, and all you have to do is attack to turn it online and attach to a pretty solid removal spell as well. For our final returning set, we have Commander Legends Game of Thrones. The Commander Draft format returns in Commander Legends Game of Thrones. Wage war against your opponents, gather influence, and claim dominion over the 7 kingdoms. Select your commander from among dozens of iconic characters from the Game of Thrones series. Utilize powerful oath spells that change the tides of battle at will. Whether you rule the game as the monarch, play politics with your enemies, or simply goad them into destroying each other, only one player may sit atop the Iron Throne. Remember, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. I'm going to go ahead and skip this first slide here because I believe these are the two exact same cards from last time. So let's go ahead and just move on to the new cards and the new stuff. We have Dothraki Bloodrider. 1, a red and a green for a 3/3 creature, human warrior. It has trample and says whenever you ravage 4, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature and create a treasure token. You ravage 4 as sources you control deal their 4th total damage during your turn. Okay, that's a pretty interesting mechanic. It's sort of like expend 4, but for damage instead of spending mana. I like that this turns itself online after the first instance of ravaging 4, so it can start enabling itself. So yeah, I think this is honestly going to be pretty strong, because once you just turn it on once, it just, no, even if it gets blocked, it's still going to continue ravaging 4. You got to kill it to stop it from keeping to gain value. Then we have Jaime Lannister, Young Lion. 1 blue and a red for a 3/3 legendary creature, human warrior. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, if at least 4 mana was spent to cast it, you become the monarch. Otherwise, create a treasure token. And for those who don't know, the monarch draws a card at the beginning of their end step. Whenever the monarch is dealt combat damage by a creature, its controller becomes the monarch. Yeah, this is just a really solid curve. You have your 3 mana 3/3 that curves into a 4 mana non-creature spell, which lines up perfectly. You have just creating treasure tokens, which will help you spend more mana to continue triggering the monarch. And it's a pretty solid body for retaking it if you need to. Yeah, this is cool. All right, now we're moving on to our new content. These are new sets from Masterman. So let's go ahead and just get into the first one. We have Delando, I'm going to say, Halls of History. Delando is a plane ruled by history. From birth, its people are taught to preserve every aspect of their lives and cultures to satisfy the curators, godlike beings that live off the acquisition and dissemination of knowledge. As a result, the plane functions as a living museum, with the capital city of Akande showcasing technologies and histories from throughout the multiverse. After Pseudo makes a deal with Declan to give him the Ember Seed after he cures his sister, the unlikely duo travels to Delando in search of the next ingredient, a divine liquid capable of flowing between the blind eternities. Ooh, alright. That's a pretty good pitch. And I'm seeing some, I want to say African inspiration here, which is really cool. We don't really have anything much like that in canon. I mean, we have Zelfir, but we haven't really explored that at all. Alright, let's start with Akande Finds the Sun. Red and a white for an enchantment saga. The first 2 chapters are exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. Until end of turn, you may play that card. And our third chapter is return target instant sorcery card in your graveyard or exile card with flashback you own to your hand. Ooh, okay, a little bit of a flashback hint here. We'll have to see if it comes in later or if it's just something we're implying about the environment. I like the card design a lot too. It's sort of like a delayed Ren's Resolve or and something in that vein that also comes with an additional card draw at the end if you manage to exile some instant sorceries. And I think it's also very nice that if you exile a card with flashback off the first 2 chapters, you return that as well despite not actually having cast it for its flashback cost. I think it's very clever. Alright, let's move on to Curator of Mysteries. 3, a blue and a blue for a 4/5 artifact creature or avatar. It has flying and vigilance, and it says if you would draw a card, you may archive the top 2 cards of your library instead. To archive a card, exile it face down. Its owner may look at it at any time and pay 2 to put it into their hand. You may cast non-creature spells you own from your archive. Okay, let's start with the archive mechanic first. It's sort of like Clues, except you get to see the card you're going to draw, so you can choose whether or not it's actually worth paying the 2 to put into your hand. Like if you're flooding out and you have a land under there, you obviously don't need to pay the 2 because you're not going to be interested in finding that. You may cast, looking at the card itself, you cast on creature spells you own from your archive, so you can basically kind of cheat the 2 mana cost here and just play those cards instead of having to pay the additional 2. So if you build your deck correctly, you can kind of get a ton of value out of this. Yeah, that is just a really cool design. Big fan. Oh, okay, next we have Meticulous Appraiser. 2, a blue and a black for a 3/3 creature, Human Advisor. When it enters, return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand. Makes sense with the saga we saw. Exhibition. Whenever you cast a historic spell or you display an exhibit, surveil 1. Now, we haven't seen exhibits yet, though I believe it's probably going to be the next card. But yeah, this is just a pretty solid design. We have a 4-mana 3/3 that returns a card from your graveyard to your hand, and surveils 1 whenever you cast a spell. Like, those are probably just pretty solid stuff. But let's get into the exhibit. I'm interested in what this is. Talisman of the First Tree. 1 of the green for a artifact exhibit. You can tap to add green. When you spend this mana to cast a creature spell, put a display counter on this card. And that has display for 6 and a green. You can pay 6 and a green to exile this artifact, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. This ability costs 1 less for each display counter on this artifact, display only as a sorcery. Okay. And the backside is Tender of the First Tree, a 4/4 creature spirit. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 0/1 green plant creature token, then put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. This ability triggers only once each turn. Okay, I am super big on this design. I think this is super cool. So you have your 2-mana rock in green, which is pretty solid. You can go ahead and just start casting creature spells, which is what you want to be doing in green anyway. And then once you get enough display counters, you can flip this into a pretty potent threat. You have a 4/4 that's going to make a growing board of 1/2s, 2/3s, 3/4s, on and on and on. Yeah. And I really like that the once each turn mirrors the fact that you can only get 1 counter per turn on the front side too, just by the nature of how tap abilities work. Yeah, this is a pretty good pitch. Big fan. Next we have Viraxa, Titan 0. Aeons ago, a primordial Eldrazi emerged from the blind eternities to swallow a plane whole. It had no way of knowing of the plane's virulent mana, which twisted the Titan into the plane until the two became inseparable. Now the denizens of Viraxa are forced to keep the Titan that swallowed them alive, lest its death doom them all. After losing to Klon and his mother's journal in the fire on Delando, Pseudo is left alone in a world on the brink of death, though he has no way of knowing his arrival was all a part of another's design. Ooh, interesting. Alright, we have Bileblight Worm. 2 black for a 5/4 creature, insect ooze dragon. Alrighty, with the beautiful type line. It has flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, you get 2 plague counters unless you sacrifice a creature. At the beginning of a plagued player's end step, they may pay 2 any number of times to remove that many plague counters. Then if they're still plagued, they lose 1 life. Oh, it's like the debt counters from that old Ravnica set that it was a mechanic that Wizards of the Coast was consider making. Yeah, that's super cool. I think this is a great place to use it. I think this card, it is being put in the slot of standard rare mythic, but I do think it's probably going to be a little too weak for our current standard rates, because 4-mana 5/4 with flying with no other downside would probably just not be good enough, and this unfortunately does have a downside. But I do like the design a lot. I think if it was like a 6/6, I would be super into this. Antibody Sweeper. Oh, I love the names for this. This is such a cool concept for a plane. 2 and a white for a 2/1 creature squid. When this creature enters, put a +++ counter on target creature control. And then Symbiosis. Whenever this creature attacks, another target attacking creature gains the following abilities until end of turn. When this creature dies, put its counters on target creature you control. Yep. Symbiosis is a pretty popular custom mechanic that's had a few different names by now. I think this is a really solid common to showcase it, because it kind of does show that Symbiosis can go in the middle of the text and not copy everything like Backup usually does. So yeah, I have no other words. This is just a really solid common. Arterial Evangel. 1 a white and a black for a 2/3 creature mutant cleric. It has lifelink, and at the beginning of each end step, if a creature you control died this turn, proliferate. Oh yeah, proliferate here. Okay, cool. The introduction of Eldrazi biology into the plane of Roxa births something terrible and new. Very cool. Yeah, this is just a pretty solid design. Showcasing that proliferate's coming back. Have we seen any counters so far? We did have the +1/+1 counter and the plague counters. Oh, very cute. You can proliferate the plague counters on your opponent. I assume we'll see we probably won't, but I'm assuming there will be cards in the set that we'll eventually one day see that will put plague counters directly on the opponent. So that is cool. Cell Harvest. For a single green mana, a sorcery. It says search your library for a basic land card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. It has life cycling for 2 and a green. 2 and a green, create a tap 0/0 colorless germ creature token and put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. I'm assuming that's supposed to discard because it does say cycling on there. Yeah, I think it's a pretty neat mechanic. It's a nice little out to drawing this late. Yeah, honestly, I can't fault it. It's solid as well. And then finally, we have the grand formulation. The Planeswalker Rosma has returned from her exile with the solution to the grand formulation. She reveals its true insidious purpose: to collapse the multiverse into a single reality shaped by its user, thus turning a world of limitless, unknown possibilities into one of singular, immutable certainty. As the infinite planes of eternity are violently drawn into Trisma, can Pseudo and his allies drop one final design to determine the fate of the multiverse? Experience the mind-bending conclusion of the Panacea arc in Magic's first standard legal double tricolor set. Interesting. I am fascinated to see what that's about. We have Declan, Destined Dealer. Blue, black, and a red for a 3/3 legendary creature, human rogue. It has war, discard a card. Does need a little period there. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, draw a card, then Declan deals 1 damage to each opponent. Alright, we have our guy coming in from Thunder Junction to show up in the set. So this is kind of just like a big mashup multiverse set, sort of like the end of the arc. Yep, it's a capstone set. I like it. And this is kind of showing off that Declan is going to be here. And I'm assuming he'll have another card at Rare Mythic, because he seemed pretty important to the story. But for now, he is uncommon. And a nice little signpost for limited. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Primordial Expansion. For a single green mana, we have a sorcery with Spree. Oh, okay, so does this mean we're getting other mechanics from the other sets too? Interesting. For 2 and a white, you can create a 3/3 white elemental creature token with lifelink, and for 2 and a red, you create a 3/3 red elemental creature token with haste. And as flashback for 2 and a green. Okay, wait, what was the set that cared about flashback? It was Delondo. Okay, interesting. So we are bringing, we're combining mechanics from across our 4 previous story sets here. Okay, this card's pretty cool. I'm a fan of it a lot. I think the flashback cost is probably a little overcosted, but like, this isn't supposed to be pushed for constructed, so I'm good with it. We have Pseudo, Grand Alchemist. We finally see our guy. 1 green, blue, red for a 3/4 legendary creature, human wizard. Envision. Beginning your end step, if you cast a multicolored spell this turn, reveal the top card of your library. You may cast it without paying its mana cost if it's a spell with mana value less than or equal to the number of colors among permanents you control. If you don't cast it, put it into your hand. Oh, very cool. Okay. So you can kind of just like, well, first of all, Pseudo himself is a multicolored spell, so you can kind of hope to spin to win into something that costs 3 or less. And then you kind of got to hope you start, for at least our constructed, you got to start finding stuff that costs 5 or less. But even if you don't, you still draw a card off. Yeah, this is a pretty solid design. Then we have Eclipse the Equation. Ooh, that mana cost. We have 2 white, 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, 2 green, and that's all 2 grid costs, which are double hybrid. It is an enchantment. When this enchantment enters, exile the top 10 cards of your library with formula counters on them. Once each turn, you may cast a multicolored spell you own from exile with a formula counter on it, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. The only future is the one we choose to create from Pseudo Magista. And that is our story spotlight. Oh, gorgeous art. Yeah, this is another very cool design. It's basically a draw 10, but only play the multicolored spells from them and only once a turn. I think that's pretty cool for like a 5 mana quotation marks card. Yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah, I think that was probably my favorite set of the group. Right? Yeah. I would say this is probably, of them all, is my favorite set of the group. I love the idea of taking all the mechanics from the previous year or 2 years of standard, depending on when we're making this set. Or making this, I guess it's a year, right? Because it's our promised year. Yeah, so this is the 1 year of standard. I like the fact that we're taking all our mechanics that our players have grown familiar with over the year, putting them all in one set, doing cool things with them, like combining them on the same card, like Spree and Flashback together. That's very cool. And we have this multicolored theme running through. The legal double tricolor set. I'm not sure what that's about. This is both Alara shards, and then this one is a Tarkir color. Okay, so what is it? Shards and wedges? Yeah, this is a wedge. So I'm assuming this is a 3-color set where all 10 3-color archetypes are viable, which is interesting. Yeah. I think Master Andy did a good job, and I'm excited to see how you do. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to our second contestant, Dr. Chillbrain. I'm going to take a little sip here to help clear my poor ravaged throat at this point, and then we'll go ahead and get started. First, we have Cimaville Towers in the Sky. Long ago, a planeswalker crafted a world of their own design. A plain of perilous dungeons and splendid treasures. A boundless sky dotted with floating fortresses. The Shaper brought inhabitants of a far-off plane to Cimaville, forcing them to challenge the plane's dungeons for the planeswalkers' amusement. Now, the Shaper is long gone, but remnants of their magic still echo across the plane, populating its dungeons with monsters and crucial resources. Its residents conquer new towers each day, harnessing the Shaper's lingering essence and the plane's powerful mana crystals in a world where perilous adventure is a fact of life. Oh, so it's kind of like the video game plane a little bit, where you're bringing in people to play your level. Okay, I like it. I think it's a solid idea. Let's see. We have Topaz Company Courier. 1 blue and a red for a 2/2 creature, Dragon Scout. It is flying. When it or another creature with flying you control enters, create a treasure token. And then it has Prismagic. For Wooburg, you can draw 2 cards. Yeah, I mean, just solid. You have a flying Arcoon, I think. I think this is an archetype uncommon, if I had to guess. That signals both flying matters and also 5-color matters, because we have that treasure tokens. And I like that it's kind of a little unclear which one you're supposed to go for, because generally you always want to be running flyers and limited. And I have this little Wooburg bonus here, which is very cool. Next, you have Confounding Puzzle. 1 and white-blue hybrid for an instant. Tap up to 2 target creatures. Invoke the Shaper 2. Put 2 loyalty counters on a Shaper's Echo you control. If you don't control one, create one first. It's a colorless planeswalker with 0, surveil 1, and -1, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Very cool. Okay. I have seen make a planeswalker token as a mechanic before, but I think this is one of the very clean iterations of it. Using a mass tech is pretty clever, and then I think the abilities are very appropriate for limited in that they're low impact when repeated, but they still have some utility and noticeable, this is doing something, right? It's not like just gaining 1 life or something very anemic like that. This is a solid payoff. Yeah, and this seems like a pretty solid design too. You can use it to tap down some blockers. You can use it to save your Shaper's Echo from damage. Yeah. Yep, these are 2 very solid starts. Let's get into our other 2 cards. We have Lich of the First Company. 1 and a black for a 1/3 creature, zombie warlock. 3 tap Spelunk. Target opponent loses 3 life. Activate only as a sorcery. To Spelunk, exile 2 or more cards with 3 or more colors among them from your graveyard. Okay, so we have a exile from graveyard mechanic using our graveyard as a resource. Very cool. And this is a pretty solid payoff. 3 mana, target opponent loses 3 life. If you can do that repeatedly, that is going to end limited games pretty quick. And I like that it's also just a 2 mana 1/3. That's a pretty decent stat line. Next we have Ronnie Adventure Chaser. Green, white, blue for a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker, Ronnie. It has +1 to create a treasure token, and you gain 2 life. Remember, we did see that 5-color mechanic earlier in Prismana, so this is going to help there. -2, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle. And finally, -6, create a 4/4 green and blue fox avatar creature token named Avatar of Esthenu with flying, and modified creatures you control have flying. Equipment, auras you control, and counters are modifications. Very cool. Okay, I really like the combo of mechanics here, because we have the equipment card, and then the -6 actually calls out modified creatures, so we can assume we have modified in the set. Yeah, I mean, this is just a really solid design. Overall, Cimaville Towers in the Sky, I give it an A+. Like, this is just a cool pitch. You have, I think, of all the cards, my favorite is probably going to be Confounding Puzzle, because I really like the Shaper's Echo mechanic, but all 4 cards here justify their inclusion here very well. Next we have Umbra City Awakens. I believe this is a returning set from last time. Sonome was once a plane devoid of magic, the metropolis of Umbra City, thriving with technology and perfect mundanity. All that changed when Baron Sengir arrived. Emerging from the blind eternities he had been trapped within for centuries, he began accumulating social power, bestowing upon his allies in the city's elite the powers of magic and vampirism. But the citizens would not be ignorant for long. Secrets are slipping out, magic is being stolen, and the world is in chaos, as anomalies and mutations run rampant. Revolution is brewing, mages are rising, and Sonome will never be the same. Alright, we have our 2 cards from last time. I don't recall if either of them have changed. I think they're both the same. Yes, they look both the same to me. So I'm just going to move on to the next 2 cards. We have Punk Rocker, 1 and a red for a 2/1 creature, human citizen sorcerer. It is study, instant or sorcery, mana value 5 or greater. Whenever you cast a spell that fits 1 or more categories, choose one this hasn't studied yet. Put a +1/+1 counter on this, and it studies that. It's in Apotheosis once all are studied. Interesting. And then Apotheosis, whenever this creature attacks, target creature can't block this turn. Okay, so we have a mechanic that basically checks if you've fulfilled these 2 boxes, and then once you've fulfilled both boxes, you get a little bit of an upside. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, studied. Sick. The fact that you have like an interim bonus in the +1/+1 counter is a really nice thing. So it's a 2 mana 2/1. Then you cast an instant sorcery spell the next turn, so it's a 3/2. And then once you cast the mana value 5 or greater, it's a 4/3 that makes one thing unable to block each combat. Yeah. Very solid common to show off the mechanic. And I appreciate putting this on a common so we can see what it's like in limited, because it'd be very easy to do this for constructed and say, oh yeah, it's a complex mechanic, but you can imagine how it is for limited. But I like that we're actually seeing how it would work in limited. Then we have On the Crimson Trail, 2 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters, create a blood token, and whenever you discard a land card, return to the battlefield tapped. Oh, very cute. So if you compare this up with wheels and stuff, you can potentially ramp a lot, but it still ramps at least 1 on its own, which is very appreciated. Yeah, I mean, oh, and it's a story spotlight too. So let's actually read the flavor text. Mitch had been on the serial killer case for months, but after catching a glimpse of Pauline's fangs, he still could hardly believe what he had seen. Very cool. So Mitch is our guy who's going to be uncovering the Baron Sengir conspiracy. Very cool. Okay. Yeah. I think this is a very solid addition to the original pitch. We have our mechanic that's kind of like the splashy mechanic here. And then we have, obviously, blood tokens for the vampire set. Makes a ton of sense. But we're seeing how it's used in colors other than the black and red it initially appeared in, which is appreciated. Okay. Let's move on to Alara Book 1 Jund. This is a returning set from last time. The first chapter of the Alara side story, Jund is a savage land of survival of the fittest. Since the conflux, interlopers from Alara's other shards have thrust themselves into Jund's food chain. Naya god trackers praise its dragons, Bant knights slay them, and Grixis necromancers compete for their fresh corpses. All the while, Brea and the new Seekers of Karmot have at last found the secret to refining Ethereum, Sangrite, the crystallized blood of dragons. They've begun terraforming the plane to build their Aether Forge, all the while dreaming of bringing Esper's great order to the rest of the shards. Alright, I do believe these 2 cards have been changed minorly. Previously, Keepers of the Aether Forge could exile itself, which did cause a bit of an issue with it infinitely looping itself, and that has been fixed. And I believe this mechanic has been changed as well. Outcompete now makes a 1/1 creature token that can't block, which is very relevant because before there was issues from the judges that the 1/1 was really not worth upgrading into a 2/2, but now that the 1/1 can't block and it can be upgraded into 2/2, I think this is a very good change overall. And then we upped the mana cost and added Flash, which I think is also a great call. 2 mana, known creature, Young Pyromancer was very strong, and I think nerfing that down a little bit is a smart move. Next we have Supplicant of Karthus. 2 and a red for a 2/2 creature, lizard sorcerer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, outcompete. There you go. And we have our create a 1/1 that can't block, sacrifice it to create a 2/2 green lizard, or sacrifice a lizard to create a 3/3 red dragon. And notably, this is a lizard, so you could just go ahead and sack this at the very beginning of combat to just make a 3/3 dragon with flying. Other lizards you control have haste, and dragons you control get +1/+1 and have haste. So that's the reason not to sacrifice it, because you can go ahead and outcompete something else and make a 4/4 hasty dragon, potentially. Very cool design. I'm a big fan of this one. Thorn Sigil Betrayer is 2 and a green for a 1/1 creature human knight. This creature gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard, and has life force. 4 and a green, mill 5 cards. Activate this ability only once. When this creature dies, if this hasn't been activated, you may activate it for free. Oh, okay, so it's like a death trigger, but you can, if you want, pay a bunch of mana to get the death trigger early. And that makes sense because you're going to be milling 5 cards, which is potentially going to pump this guy up quite a bit. This guy kind of looks like an Elden Ring enemy. Yeah, I think this is a pretty cool design. I would want to see more cards with life force to see how they tie in, but I think for an example card of the mechanic, this is one of the best ways to do it. Alright. Ooh, we have a UB set. Star Wars Age of the Empire. Enter the galaxy far, far away in the crossover event of the year. Star Wars Age of the Empire adapts the original trilogy of the iconic Star Wars films for the original trading card game. Improvise your way out of trouble with the scrappy rebels, fight for the Empire with an army of expendable stormtrooper tokens, smuggle monsters and machines alike with the galaxy's criminal underworld, and take to the stars an iconic spacecraft. Whether you fight for the light or the dark side, the Force is with you in this universe's beyond adventure. Let's go ahead and get into Yoda, Reclusive Master. 1/3 legendary creature, 1 in a green for a 1/3 legendary creature, Alien Wizard. Ooh, I like that type one. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. 2 in a green, tap, the Force is with you, activate only as a sorcery. If you have the Force, scry 1, otherwise you gain it, using the Force spends it. Interesting. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control do combat damage to a player, you may use the Force. If you do, draw a card. Oh, okay. I'm a really big fan of this mechanic. Okay, so basically it's like a energy counter that you can only ever get 1 of. So you get that energy counter and then you can spend it to do something. And if you would get more of that energy counter, you would just scry 1 instead. Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea for a mechanic. Kudos. The Millennium Falcon. 1 in a red for a legendary artifact, Spacecraft. Whenever you attack, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. Wow, that's a pretty solid start. Station. Tap another creature control, put a charge counter equal to its power on the spacecraft. Station only as a sorcery. It's an artifact creature at 10+. At 10+, we have Flying, and at the beginning of your second main phase, add a red for each creature you control. Sorry, each creature you attack with this turn, and it's a 5/5. Yeah, damn, that is a good-ass card. Makes sense that it's mythic, for sure. So you have your 2 mana artifact that whenever you attack, you draw a card, in quotation marks. Really solid. And then once you actually manage to fully crew it, you'll start adding red for each of the creatures you attacked with. I mean, yeah, that is just a home run of a design. I mean, that is the Millennium Falcon to a T. This is a very good pitch so far. Actually, well, I'm interested to see this. We have Darth Vader, Emperor's Fist. 2 and a black for a 2/4 legendary creature, Human Wizard. I love typing Jedi as wizards, because they're space wizards. That's what they are. I like that a lot. 2 and a black for a 2/4 Death Touch. Black, sacrifice another creature, the Force is with you. Oh, that's so flavorful. Whenever Darth Vader attacks, you may use the Force. If you do, defending player discards a card unless they pay 2 life, then sacrifices a creature unless they pay 2 life. Oh, I love that he sacks creatures to get the Force. That's so cool. Oh, this set is really doing it for me. This is really good. Okay. Design. The design seems pretty solid. I don't know how strong it actually is, but forcing the opponent to lose 4 life if they don't want to lose any resources is a pretty potent thing on your 3-drop. And he's pretty good at attacking with that Death Touch and Thick Butt. So yeah, pretty solid. Chewbacca, Loyal Co-Pilot. 5 a green and a red for a 7/7 legendary creature, Wookiee Rogue Pilot. When Chewbacca enters, draw a card. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. And smuggle. 1 a red and a green, you may cast a spell for its smuggle cost. If you do, at the beginning of the next end step, turn it face down as suspicious cargo, a colorless artifact. Turn it face up for its mana cost as a sorcery. Okay. I'm assuming this would be the one version of Chewbacca, and then we would have like the main version show up at a higher rarity. And that's something that Universes Beyond does a lot, and I think I'm a fan of that. Yeah, I mean, this is just a pretty solid design. You do have the 3 mana mode. That's basically a Explorer, and then when you later can play it for 7 to start getting those initial lands. I'm not as high on this one because you don't get to draw that card when you do turn it face up, and all you get to do is start ramping, which when you're at 7 mana, that's kind of already like not super enticing. But like just having a 7/7 lying around is still pretty solid, actually. Yeah, no, I like it. It's pretty good. And then we have our is this our final set? It might be the final one. Xerix. Xerix is a world of patterns. Outsiders call it a noble, even impossible, but it's governed by arcane laws. These mathematical truths are prized, worshipped, held in reverence as the sequence. Extraplanar incursions have disrupted the sequence. Planeswalkers, Phyrexia, Omen Paths, 3-dimensional outsiders. Now contradictions have begun to appear. Strobe Knights defend the sequence's order. Truth is holy, contradiction its antithesis. Iconoclastic groups embrace the newfound discord. They form the Society of Paradox. Our world is already mysterious and labyrinthine. Contradictions are new puzzles to understand. Explore the outer bounds of possibility. Seek patterns and understanding in numbers. Oh, that is a good ass set pitch. That is very good. Xerix. Let's go ahead and get into Veritavore. 1 a black for a creature, weird. It has star power and 1+ star toughness. It has Matrix. Veritavore's power is equal to the number of mana values among cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to the number +1. Oh, okay, so we're bringing back the mana value of cards matter from the graveyard from Streets of New Capenna. Big fan. Yeah, I mean, this is just a solid design. It grows with the number of cards that have different mana values. 5 is kind of like the target usually, so this is basically going to be a Tarmogoyf of this set, which I am a big fan of. Next we have Tholilott's Problem. 2 and a red for an enchantment. When this enchantment enters, quantize 4. Create a colorless, weird creature token with total power and toughness 4. Choose a value 0 or greater for each stat. Oh, I love this mechanic. Whenever a creature token you control dies, this enchantment deals 1 damage to any target. Oh, this is so much fun. So you can make, for this card, you make a 3/1, a 2/2, or a 1/3. Oh, or 0. Okay, so it can also be a 0/4 or a 4/0. I doubt you're going to be making a 4/0 too often, but the fact that you can just, like, if you have an Anthem out with this, that would be pretty cool. And then for even bigger values, you can just really customize the creature you want. Man, okay, Quantize 4 sells this so well. The rest of the card is, like, you know, it does the job, but this is really just showcasing the mechanic, and that is a banger of a mechanic. Scholar of the Great Zero. 1 a green and a blue for a 3/3 creature, Djinn Wizard. 1 and a tap. You can pay 1 and tap to copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Yeah, that feels pretty Xerix. I think this is a pretty solid design. Nothing too crazy, stuff we have seen before, but I like that it's acting as like an archetype uncommon here. And finally, we have Sunder Yixlid's Gate. 3 black for a sorcery. Draw a card for each creature control, then destroy all creatures. Oh, cute. So you can kind of like put your own creatures in front of the gun here to draw some extra cards. It helps circumvent one of the issues with Wraths, that you can't really run very many creatures of your own because you lose them all. And I think this is a great way to incentivize doing that. And then I am seeing we have Sengir quoted on the flavor text here, so I like that we're calling back to our old Baron Sengir set here. And then I am remembering we actually do have one more set. Yeah. Timelines of Crovenir. With Umbra City under his thumb and an army of vampires at his command, Baron Sengir set his sights on the mythical plane of Crovenir. The world is a vast wilderness caught in a time loop. Each day the world is remade by one of its 5 fickle gods with competing visions for its fate. According to ancient Planeswalker legend, anyone who broke the loop by usurping the gods would be granted power over time by the plane's chaotic mana. The gods and their followers across the plane must put aside their squabbles to fight back against the vampiric onslaught. I don't believe this card has changed, but I know this card has changed, so we're going to go ahead and get into that. Lightning strikes twice. 1 in a red for a sorcery moment. And I do really appreciate this frame, by the way. I don't know if that was there last time. If it is, I missed it. But I am seeing it now, and knowing what this mechanic does, huge fan. Capture for 4 in a red. As a sorcery, pay 4 in a red to put this from your graveyard into play as an equipment with Equip 2. Attach it to a creature you control. Exile it when equipped creature deals equipped creature damages a player to cast a free copy. Create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. Hell yeah. Okay. So before, this used to be 3 in a red to discard a card, put an artifact into a play that let you cast it normally. But now this is an equipment, and you actually have to chip in to cast the free copy. Yeah, I mean, this is just a really cool design. I think it's still probably a little overcosted on the flashback mode because it's 7 mana total to get your 2 1/1s. But, I mean, you don't really have much room to power creep these sorcery speed raise the alarm. So I understand being cautious with this for sure. Alright, let's get into our new cards. We have Archdruid of Recurrences. 2, a black and a green for a 3/4 creature, Bear Druid. It has Shatter. When it dies, if it didn't have Decayed, it returns to the battlefield, except it's a Bear Druid reflection with a Decayed counter. It can't block. When it attacks, sacrifice it and then combat. Reflections you control have Death Touch. It's really funny. We haven't got to mine yet, but every single set of this challenge has used Decayed. And you know what? They should. Decade's a really good mechanic. This is just like a solid design to showcase Shatter. I said the same for Masterman Submission, that this is just a really solid mechanic. Decayed is basically the perfect limited mechanic. And the little bonus of reflections you control have Death Touch. Again, same as the other card. This shows off once the creature actually dies, it still retains some new value. Next we have Harrowing Homecoming. Black for a sorcery moment. Hey, we got another moment. Capture for 1 in a black. Look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 and 2 life more to cast. Hell yeah. I mean, this is a Thoughtseize that kind of is more of a delay than like a discard. But you have that capture to help further delay on the second thing. Yeah. I mean, I think this is just a cool mechanic as well. I think this is a big improvement over the last version of the mechanic. Making an equipment that you have to chip in with to incentivize attacking is so fun. The frame here, I can't get over how cool of an idea that is. Like, this is just perfect. And then this is also, interestingly, a story spotlight. And I wonder what the story here is. I imagine someone's killing someone, but I don't know who. Is there anything else? Nope. Okay. I think of all the sets for my opponents are reviewed, my favorites are going to be Xerex for sure. Star Wars Age of the Empire, that's a good one. And then I think I'm going to go with the Grand Formulation as well. Yeah. Those were my favorites of these, my opponents here. And I wish them the best. But now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go through my stuff. And I'm kind of just going to give reasonings for why I did certain things or the other. Let me take a quick sip and then we'll get started. Okay. I went ahead and led with my new sets. So let's start with Muraganda, Invaders from the Future. And we're going to go ahead and start with the card, Invaders from the Future. 2, a red and a red for an enchantment. It is Countdown 4. Spells you cast from exile cost 2 less to cast. This enchantment enters with 4 time counters on it. On your upkeep, remove 1. When there are none left, this enchantment permanently gains the countdown ability. And then it says, whenever a time counter is removed from a permanent you control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Countdown. Well, okay, first of all, let's start. Why did I pick Muraganda? So initially I didn't. You know what? Actually, I think this is going to be better to talk about once I get to the other countdown card in this group. So let's actually just talk about Invaders. 4-mana enchantment. I wanted to showcase how time counters would be different this set, right? Because we have a lot of different time counters mechanics. We have impending, we have suspend. I'm sure we have more that I can't think about right now. But I wanted something that's like, this is going to sit here and do something, and then once time runs out, big thing happens, right? Because in this set pitch, we have this alien or future invasion coming, and like time is running out for our heroes, right? And I wanted to represent that, and I think this does a pretty good job. This is kind of signaling that there's going to be a widespread time counter theme, even if it's not just the countdown cards. This is going to synergize with them. It's going to be a pretty consistent card draw engine even by itself, because you'll have your 4 cards drawn off this, and the 4th one will cost 2 less. It'll have additional synergies. People love Prosper decks, love in quotation marks, and this obviously works pretty well with them. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our pitch. Miraganda is a land of strong primal mana, but it won't be forever. In the far future, Miraganda is technologically advanced, but drained of mana from an unknown calamity. So the dead gods of the future have invaded the present, intent on stealing the primal mana from other timelines to bring it to their own future. The beasts, men, and oozes of Miraganda must unite to fight off this mysterious invaders before the end arrives, with the help of a planeswalker familiar with the manipulations of time. I try for Survivor to do pitches that you would never be able to make a real set. And I think while this is not necessarily one of those, I do think it would be difficult, at least, to find enough art to make a full set with these. Five. This is kind of like a crazy concept in general. Like, we do see these things, like, we have obviously alien invaders invade like these primal lands. We've seen that concept before, but for Magic, you would have to do like a little twist on it, and I think setting it on a known plane but not super known is a solid enough twist. Alright, let's get into our card. We have Mimeoplasm Primal Tide, 3 green for a 1/1 legendary creature Ooze. When Mimeoplasm enters, manifest Ooze 5. Put the top card of your library onto the battlefield face down as a 0/0 Ooze creature with 5+1/+1 counters on it. Turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. And then it says whenever another creature you control is turned face up, put X+1/+1 counters on Mimeoplasm, where X is that creature's power. I don't love this card. This was a card that I struggled a lot with trying to decide what I was going to do with it. Initially, this was just going to be another Mimeoplasm Sultai card that like copied face down stuff as you turned it up, but Manifest Ooze takes up a lot of text space, so I wasn't able to do everything I wanted with it. And also, I don't like Manifest Ooze. After the cards are posted, Chillbrain rightfully pointed out that this exacerbates the issues of Manifest, in that a Manifest card is much worse when you can't turn it face up, and this makes the issue a lot worse, because now you're not taking advantage of those counters. So yeah, I think this entire card, unfortunately, I just don't like it very much. I think it's probably one of the weakest cards in my submission. But I do like that it synergizes with Challenge the Dead Gods. 2, a white and white for a sorcery. Each player chooses a creature they control. Destroy the rest. The creature you chose this way roars. If its power is greater than its base power, create an XX green dinosaur creature token where X is the difference. I really like this mechanic in theory. I think the fact that it like rewards you for basically being modified, auras, equipments, plus encounters, temporary buffs, stuff like that, I think that's all very cool. I think making XX tokens is like a nice modality there. We're calling out dinosaurs without actually having to feature a dinosaur card because we have limited space. I really just enjoy Roar as a mechanic a lot, but I think that's just me as a player. I really like big guys that grow, and I think this plays into that very well. I don't know if you'll be able to field like a full set, you know? I think it would be very hard to get multiple common designs that roar and have it do so either like consistently or safely. But that being said, I like that it pairs with Manifest Ooze. I may not like Manifest Ooze, but I like that Roar calls out to it. I think that will earn me some grace for that mechanic and this one. And finally, we have Teferi the Clock's Hand. 1 in a blue for a 1/3 legendary creature, human wizard. It is countdown 3. If you would draw a card, except the first one you draw on each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. And you can tap to draw a card, then discard a card. Okay. Let's talk about the card first, and then I'll talk about why it should pick Miraganda. 1 in a blue for 1/3 that taps to draw a card and discard a card. We've seen that in canon before. Rona has been a standard playable card in the past, so I decided I wanted to emulate something similar here. The fact that he ticks down to eventually become a Teferi's Ageless Insight, I thought that was very cute, because Teferi's Ageless Insight is one of the most popular cards that actually says Teferi on it, so I think it's likely that the judges will be familiar with it and might notice for this card. And of course, once you do count down to 0, his tap ability gets a lot better, because it becomes card positive instead of card neutral. So initially this was actually going to be a Ixalan set. My idea was that the Millennium Calendar was going to hit 0, right? We were going to have a countdown. There was a Millennium Calendar card with 10,000 countdown. Like the number was countdown 10,000. And then it would have ways to remove it very fast. But the issue is I couldn't fit Ixalan alongside everything else, right? Ixalan has so much going on already. We have the inner core. We have dragons, dinosaurs, elves, merfolk, merfolk, pirates. We have vehicles sometimes. Like, there's all these different competing things. And I felt like no matter what, like, combination of 4 cards I made, I was excluding something that was, like, vital to Ixalan, right? We have transforming double-sided cards. Like, that's another huge part of Ixalan that we never miss whenever we go. And I was just like, okay, there's too much here. I can't, as much as I want to do this on Ixalan, I cannot do this on Ixalan. So I said, okay, I have this mechanic I like, Countdown. I have this mechanic I like, Roar. Where else can I go? And then I thought, well, Dominaria kind of has like dragons and Kavu and stuff. Those could roar. Teferi is from there, so that would make sense for him to show up. I could do it like an event set. I considered having a set that would take place on Tolarian Academy with other like schools cameoing. And we had like this group of schools. We had like a school from Kamigawa that was dedicated to Tamio. We had like a Gobakan school that was all about like sand and crystals and mirrors and stuff. And I really liked that set concept, but again, so hard to sell it. Because, again, this is like, we have all this cool new stuff, but it's set on Dominaria, and people want to see stuff from Dominaria. It runs into the same problems as Murders at Carlisle Manor, where the detective stuff was just overbearing, and people did not like the detective stuff. And I was worried if my initial set pitch of weird time stuff didn't really land, people were going to want to see more Dominaria stuff, and it was just not going to be there, because I only had 4 cards to show it off. So I'm like, okay, we're moving sets again. What plane do we want to check out? And then it hit me. Miraganda. Perfect. We've seen very little of it, so people are already used to like 1 or 2 concept from the plane at most. So I have room to do this new cool concept and also show the old stuff that people are still familiar with. I can show a legendary creature in the Mymioplasm. I just make sure they know there are dinosaurs here. I sell it with my set pitch. And then I can show my countdown stuff that I actually really like and I'm proud of. So that is what I ended up doing. That's why I went with Miraganda. I did go back and forth and actually including the Aetherdrift lore we got, and I think I did include a little bit of it in the set pitch with like the dead gods, because we didn't know about those before Aetherdrift. But overall, I decided like the weird oil vampires and stuff to just like, I would let people imagine they're there, but I didn't want to show it off because it's not like, it's not what people think of when they first think of Miraganda. This is a primal plane, and you know, you just want to make sure we sell it. And then there was, while I was developing this, there was going to be like a creatures with no abilities matter, because you may not know this, but the reason Manifest is even here is because face down manifested creatures, except for the ones with Ward 2, they have no abilities. And I was going to be like, okay, I can use that to sell Miraganda's iconic no abilities matter, right? Face down creatures have no abilities. I have a card that says, hey, creatures you control with no abilities get +1/+1, and then it manifests, and then the rules text would say, hey, face down creatures or have no abilities. But I decided that's really just not going to be a good idea if you only have 4 cards to show it off, because that's going to be confusing to read. You're going to have to look up the rules, and by that point, I don't want the judges doing that. I think that's a bad impression. So I just decided overall, cut the no abilities thing. If they happen to notice that manifested creatures have no abilities, that's nice. I think if I was redoing this, I would cut manifest completely. The only reason it was even here in the first place was because of the no abilities thing. And now that it's gone, there's really no reason to keep it around. And I could give Mimeoplasm a real good card instead. Okay, that's a lot of yapping about Maragonda. Let's go ahead and move on to our second step. Myth Point, Dark Stars. We have Shay, first to shine. 3 white/black for a 5/5 legendary creature, Vampire Knight. She has star power. If you have enough star power, it starts at 0. It increases on each end step if you spent Wooburg to cast spells that turn. At 3+, you're going Supernova. She has flying. Other creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is your star power. And Supernova. During your turn, creatures you control have Death Touch and Lifelink. So, I'll get into the pitch in a minute, but Shay was basically meant to be like, okay, I need a big, big splashy mechanic to kind of like showcase why this world, right? I really like to lead off with like the big mechanic that I have that says why should I be interested in this set, right? I often do that for my actual custom sets as well. Like I like to show off, why are you here? What is the mechanical justification for why we're in this world? And I think star power is a pretty good justification. The Wooburg Matters is something that tends to be pretty popular. A lot of very popular mechanics in custom they care about Wooburg. So I think star power is going to be interesting in that vein. I don't know if I love my final rendition of star power. I think casting Wooburg spells for 3 turns in a row is going to be a tough sell for limited, right? I think this card sells only having 1 or 2 star power pretty well, and ideally the fact that I included 2 star power cards in the submission that both work with having less star power is something that I hope will help there. But I think going Supernova is going to be tough to do in general. Like the idea was for the first time you activate star power, you're doing it off like treasures, right? And then your more permanent mana fixing a generation would come in later to do the second and third star power triggers. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to go over well with the judges. That is something I'm interested to see. Let's get into Myth Point itself. The Black of Night has expanded, eating every star in the skies of Myth Point, save one. The brightest star still remains. The brightest has chosen its champions, its beloved starlings. Plain, go away. Has chosen its champions, its beloved starlings, to push back the dark. It has gifted them the power of shine, but this gift comes with a string attached. The shine can only be maintained by devouring human souls. The starlings defend Myth Point from the horrors sent by the dark, while secretly preying upon the very citizens they are supposed to protect, sacrificing the few for the many. Myth Point is the magical girls plane. That's about it. Like, there's really nothing to it. I was inspired by a certain commenter in the chat who said that I should do Yuri to throw off the judges from my scent, and I decided to do it as a joke. I did want to make this an actual set concept, so it is more than just that. But I figured I want to do something a little outside of my wheelhouse, because so many of my set concepts are, this plane is dark and evil, but there is hope. And I just still did do that here, but I decided to do it with the twist of, hey, we have these magical girls running around, they're also vampires, and that's like very different than what I normally do. So hopefully people like that. I think the twist of them being vampires is kind of like the main pull here, because just having magical girl plane is something we've seen before, but making them like have this moral quandary that they have to kill people to protect them, I think that's a very interesting little twist. Alright, let's get into our card. We have Infinity Beckons. I am also doing Spree, so that is 2 people doing Spree. For a single blue mana, we have a sorcery. You can pay 2 generic to create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. You can pay 1 in a red, trigger a token that's copy of target creature control except as haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, and we can pay 2 in a green to have target player draw a card for each creature they control with power 4 or greater. The intent behind this was to show that, hey, you can go ahead and use your spree cards to help pay for star power. I didn't want to call it out explicitly, but we have multicolored spree cards. I included a generic option to make sure you're never locked out. If you happen to run this in like a blue-black deck, for example, at least you'll still have a 3-mana token mode, which is pretty solid. But if you happen to tech into red and or green, you get nice bonuses as well. And with the fixing that would presumably be in this limited format, being able to pay 1 or 2 of these costs in your white-black deck or blue-black deck or whatever doesn't seem unreasonable. Next we have Graffiti Bots. Green and a blue for a 1/3 artifact creature robot artist. It has star power. It can tap to add 1 mana of any color. It can pay 5 and tap to add woo work. This ability costs X less to activate, where X is your star power. And once you're going supernova, whenever you cast a multicolored spell, draw a card. I love pushed mana dorks, so I had to do at least 1 in this pitch. I think I wanted to make sure that star power showed up on something that didn't cost 5 mana, right? Because I wanted to show, like, hey, there are cards that are still going to be good even when your star power is literally 0. And this card gets better and better the more star power you have, you know? Eventually, in longer games, you may just tap it to add 5 mana. And I think the power fantasy of that is very interesting. The supernova is also a potent late game draw. I want all my star power cards to be kind of just good with no star power, and then they get really good with star power. And I think this sells that pretty well. With the benefit of hindsight, I might have switched this instead to an uncommon and used my rare mythic slot somewhere else, and probably nerf this design because it's a little too good for an uncommon, and have it maybe use like treasures or something instead to kind of sell like, hey, this temporary mana generation you're going to turn into star power, and then later you'll turn your temporary mana generation into permanent mana generation. Yeah, I think Graffiti Bots might actually be my favorite of the submission, to be honest. Then we have Vesper in Bitter decks, and this is the Promised Yuri. 2 blue-black for a 3/5 legendary creature, Vampire Rogue. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, exile the top card of their library face down. You may look at and play that card for as long as it remains in exile, and you may spend mana of any type to cast it. And then you can pay red, tap to exile 2 cards from your graveyard to have Vesper deal 2 damage to any target. This was basically just like a design that I thought would be neat. I think Wizards of the Coast sometimes just prints commanders for the hell of it that don't really have anything to do with the set, and I thought I might like to do that here. I probably would not do that with the knowledge I have now. I think it would be better to just make this like a card slot that synergizes more obviously with the set, because right now the set is very get 5 color focused, and we don't really get a hint of anything going on outside of that. And I think having a mechanic that actually cared about like some sort of vampirism, like not blood tokens, but something like that is vampire related, would be cool. And I think I missed that here, and it would have helped the playing feel a little less one note. And now for my personal favorite set of the 3 new sets, we have Asholon. And starting with Miral, Sun's Firstborn. 2, a red and a red for a 5/4 legendary creature, Demigod. Whenever Miral attacks, create a tapped Candle token. It's an artifact with tap, add colorless. You can't spend this mana to cast your first spell each turn. And then she says, once during each of your turns, you may cast a copy of the spell you most recently cast this turn. If you cast a permanent spell this way, it gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And timing rules still apply on that recast. This might be my favorite card of the submission too. It's definitely up there. I think Miral is just like a home run of just perfectly showcasing what I think Asholon's about. We have the very obvious Day of the Dead inspiration from her art. We have the candle tokens that kind of hint towards a second spell or artifact mana matters theme. We have a pretty novel effect that we haven't seen in canon before, which I think is a nice touch. And she implies a cycle as well. Yeah, I think just she is for Survivor, she is basically one of the best things that I could have done to show off Asholon, and I'm going to be proud about that. It's just a cool design, I'll be honest. Next we have Train to the... let's start with the pitch. Asholon is 2 lands in 1. The living live their lives above the earth, then upon their deaths sink below to the city of the dead and live as spirits. There, the sun's daughters entertain the dead with festivals and performances, and protect them from the threats that live within the long death. During both dusk and dawn, one still yet alive can peer into the city for a moment to catch a glimpse of a long-lost relative. Those who are not seen are slowly forgotten, and the long death's hold over them grows stronger. Yeah, I think it's just a pretty solid pitch. It's pretty much just Day of the Dead, but on a magic plane. Like, I'm not sugarcoating it too much here. There's a little bit of a fantasy element, but it's like pretty word for word. But I think that goes for it well because it's not something we've seen before in Magic, and I really like to do that for our pitches. Like I mentioned, like this is a set that would be very hard to make like a full like draft set, but I think for a Survivor pitch, what it implies is perfect. All right, let's move on to the card. We have Train to the Dead City. 4 mana for a 5/5 artifact vehicle. Exile a creature card with power 3 or greater from your graveyard. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. And whenever this vehicle attacks, you may cast a creature card exiled with it. If you do, that creature enters tapped and attacking with a finality counter on it, and you still pay its costs, and has crew 3. This is just like solid, you know? It's not like a home run of a design or anything, but I like that it can synergize with your candle tokens to give you a second spell to cast in the turn, or it can be your first spell if you need it to. I like that it has the alternate crew mode that still requires 3 power either way. I think that's a cute touch. Yeah, you know, I really don't have much to say about it. I think it's just fine. Let's move on to Painted Spider. 1 a red and a green for a 2/3 creature Spider Spirit. It has reach. When it enters, you make a tapped candle token, and you can pay 8 to create 2/2 green skeleton creature tokens, activate only as a sorcery. I'm kind of just pulling on one of my favorite things from the Brothers War set was that we had these very expensive generic mana payoffs for our Power Stones, and we're doing the same thing here with candle tokens. It's cute art, so I think that's going to be a nice bonus. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much just pretty by the numbers, but solid design for the purposes of this competition. I really don't have much to say about it. I think this entire set pitch is kind of just solid. Yeah, it sounds braggadocious, I know, but yeah, it is. Finally, we have Isolde's Perdition. Black, red for a legendary enchantment. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may exile a card from your graveyard. If you do, you draw a card and lose 1 life for each black mana symbol in the exiled card mana cost, and then you add red for each red mana symbol in the exiled card's mana cost. I think this is a really cool design that probably wanted to be in literally any of the other set pitches, because we have this token that adds colorless mana that cannot cast this whatsoever, and those tokens adding colorless mana implies that mana costs aren't going to be so harsh, and this card literally wants mana costs to be as harsh as possible, which is rough. But, you know, I think outside of that, it's still a really fun design. Caring about mana cost is something we've seen Canon experiment with a little bit recently, but it hasn't been super widespread, so I feel pretty comfy saying that this would be a novel effect, which I think you want to be doing in Survivor as often as you can. Okay, let's move on to the new cards for the old sets. I'm just going to go over the small changes I made to the old cards as they show up. Feed had it swapped, so now if cards have the same type, you draw a card, otherwise it gets a counter, instead of getting a counter or otherwise drawing a card. This card did not change at all. Let's start with Exploring the Coral Crags. 3 blue for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell with an odd mana value, create an XX blue fish creature token where X is that spell's mana value. Whenever you cast a spell with an even mana value, draw X cards where X is half that card's mana value. I'm a big fan of Shark Typhoon, so I decided to do something in that vein. I wanted to showcase like some enchantments and artifacts that would like show up in the set, so that way we have more fodder for feed. You know, I think this is just a fine design, you know? I like that I didn't have to round down for the X, because whenever you do half of an even mana value, it's always going to be a whole number, so you don't have to round. But yeah, I think it's just a solid design. I don't think it'll win me any points. I don't think it'll lose me any points. It's just fine. Iron Blood Mariner is 1 a red and a white for a 0/4 creature human knight. When it enters, you may search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And it gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. I think it's a pretty pushed Stoneforge Mystic, even for 3 mana, but I think it signals some fun stuff about the limited. One of the judges explicitly was wondering what white and red we're going to be doing in the format, and I think having these like warriors in diving suits that wield iconic equipment is a pretty solid answer to the question. It's nothing crazy that we haven't seen before, but I think having artifacts matters is a cool thing to do because, hey, Feed cares about having the same types, so maybe Feed can care about artifact in this colors, and can care about creatures in other colors, right? The implications are there. You can look for the ties. Wild Seer, the only change was I was using the battle symbol here for 6 instead of just the number, and one of the judges preferred having the number instead of the battle symbol, so I just switched that. Personally, I would have left it the battle symbol, but when the judge asks something, you do what they ask. You don't ignore it, because that is a bad recipe. But if I was making this an actual set, I would still do the battle symbol for sure. So technically, I've learned nothing. This has not changed. Okay, let's start with our new card, Sneaking into Bastion. 2 and a red for a sorcery. Until end of turn, any number of target creatures you control each get +1/+0 and gain whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, create a treasure token. It has Rouse for 4 red. Whenever you attack, you may cast this card from your graveyard for its Rouse cost. It costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature. Then exile this spell. I'm going to take a little sip because I've been yapping for a while. Okay. Rouse, I think, is a pretty solid mechanic. We already have the implication of there being 1/1s in this format, so we already know we have an element of go wide. This escapes a lot of the normal issues with Flashback in that certain mechanics and effects can't go on Flashback cards because it's going to be a face-up issue from the graveyard. But since this is an attack trigger, you can put stuff like combat tricks or even removal on the Rouse trigger because there's a set time that it's going to happen. Costing 1 less for each attacking creature is a nice touch. Unfortunately, this is a mechanic, I think, from an earlier round of Survivor. I forgot that I made it. I thought the mechanic I made earlier reduced based on the power of the creature, but I believe I was told it reduces based on the number of attacking creatures. So it's going to be similar there, unfortunately, and that may bite me in the butt. You know, we'll see. And then for our other card, we have Brambleborn Paladin. 1 green for a 3/2 creature Raccoon Knight. It has Offspring for 1 mana and return a land you control to its owner's hand. It has Trample and Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I just wanted to show, like, hey, Offspring's coming back, but here you go, new twist. We can add some additional costs in there now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe any Offspring card in Bloomburrow costed anything except mana. So now we have this additional cost. Obviously, the additional cost helps enable the landfall trigger, which is a nice bonus. Yeah, I think it's just a neat card. I nerfed the Wheeled Mirror Helm to cost 3 mana instead of 4. I don't believe this card changed. Okay, let's start with Recurring Delusions. 1 a blue and a black for an enchantment. When it enters, return up to 1 target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. You may put a Decayed counter on it. And then at the beginning of your end step, if a creature with Decayed died under your control this turn, return this enchantment to its owner's hand. Like I said, Decayed is just a good, solid, limited mechanic. I really like this Arcoon, personally, Archetype and Common, because it's sort of like a modal type thing where you have, hey, you can return this thing from your graveyard to the battlefield, and you're good. You don't have to put Decayed on it. Or, optionally, you can put Decayed on it, attack with it, let it die, return Recurring Delusions to your hand, and then, next turn, recast it again, and keep the loop going. You can just also use other Decayed creatures to enable it. We already know there's Decayed tokens in the set that would work with this, so I really like this as like a signal for a Decayed dot deck type archetype. I think this is my favorite of the 3 Arcoons I put in the submission. And then our final card we're going to be reviewing today, the Wicker King Bound. 1 and a black for a 5/4 legendary artifact creature, Scarecrow. It has Chained. This isn't a creature unless you've sundered your chains. As a sorcery, exile 5 cards with different mana values from your graveyard to sunder your chains for the rest of the game. Whenever you attack, mill 2 cards. If your chains are sundered, you may cast one of those cards by paying life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. I think this is a pretty cool design, honestly. 2 mana to like have a mill engine is pretty weak, but the fact that it unchains to become this 5/4 that starts free casting stuff by paying life is pretty potent. It is calling back to the Wicker King from the original submissions blurb, which I think is cool. I think the art's also pretty cool. Having a legendary Scarecrow as like the big enemy is a nice touch, I think. I think it's just a solid design. I think Chained is a pretty cool mechanic. It is worsened a little bit by having Feed in the same submission, and that we have multiple different mechanics that are like eating the graveyard for value. It's not like as creative as it could be to have both of them be in the same submission, but I think Chained is notably different enough as a like one-time payment rather than a multiple-time payment to distinguish itself a little bit. Okay. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you everyone so much for listening to my rambling. I will be, once this video goes up, it's pretty much going to be the next day, I think, that the winner actually gets announced. So root for me, please. And yeah, I will see you all then. Bye-bye.